Hey, social media land, this is Ted Victor, founder of the Broward Social Network. Today is Tuesday, the last day in June in 2020. And I am here with Mr. Willie Jones, who is a candidate for, in my opinion, the most important seat in Broward County Sheriff. Mr. Jones, welcome back to the Broward Social Network.
Thank you much. May I ask you to, I need one favor from you.
Yes, sir.
Please don't call me Mr.
Okay, not a problem, that's easy.
And I'm gonna tell you why.
Why?
I'm a candidate and on the ballot is gonna say Willie Jones. And I wanna make sure when people decide to vote for Willie Jones, they're not looking for Mr. Willie Jones.
Okay.
You know, it's all name recognition. And when I've asked many of people when I interview, especially when it's recorded as live, you know, it's Willie Jones. And people say, well, my parents told me to respect my elders. And I'm okay with that. But unfortunately, on that ballot, it does not say Mr. Willie Jones. And I don't want people looking for that.
Right. Okay, Willie Jones, welcome back to the Broward Social Network. On April, we were here with your cohorts who are also running for the same seat. And now I've decided, unlike the other organizations, which I do respect very much, I've decided to give each candidate a 1 hour exclusive in order for the public to really get to know them. Okay. Broward County has approximately 2 million residents. Here on the Broward Social Network, there are a few thousand participants. And nowadays, folks are both winning and losing elections with race within margins. So if the thousands of participants on this platform can possibly vote for the candidate of their choice through this vehicle, it is very important to have this conversation. So we're going to talk about quite a few things, and this is going to be your opportunity once again, and I'm sure you're doing it on many platforms, but this time you have much more flexibility and time to let the community know who you are. So I'm going to allow you to start to introduce yourself to the participants of the Broward Social Network. Hundreds and thousands will see this interview, and it'll be here at their leisure for them to go back on social media. This will be on Facebook. This is on YouTube. This is on Twitter. This is on Periscope. This is on Twitch. This is on DLive. So the folks will have access to you and your message. So please, once again, introduce yourself to the residents of Broward County and why you are running for sheriff.
Good morning, and I thank you for this opportunity. I'm gonna do the typical thing. I'm gonna do my resume first, and then I'll talk about my passion, why I'm running for sheriff. Born and raised in Miami, educated through the public school system. I'm number 2 of 5 children. At the last time we talked, I had not lost my mom, but I lost my mom, you know about it, but we're not gonna get into that. Started law enforcement in 1975 with Metro-Dade Police Corrections. Worked there for 5.5 years, doing many different tasks. Left there and came to the city of Fort Lauderdale. Worked at the city of Fort Lauderdale for 8.5 years. Again, many different assignments. Well, there were several assignments that I thought, and I look back and say they were very instrumental to where I'm at now on my development. One, I was the minority police recruiter. I had an opportunity early on to get into the administrative and thought process and strategies of hiring minorities. Left there, and I did the background investigations as well. Left there, went into the private sector as a consultant. I worked for and with the federal government doing community policing instructions and community relationship instructions all over the county. When I came back, I wrote several youth programs with the Urban League and with Healthy Moms, Healthy Babies. I wrote programs teaching African-American males how to take on parenting from their perspective, because it's a totally different avenue. Went back to work with the Broward Sheriff's Office in '95 and concluded my career there. In 2014, I retired out. Again, many different positions there. My last position, I was an administrative sergeant, where I oversaw multi-million dollars worth of assets for the city of Pompano Beach and the Broward Sheriff's Office. I also ran the emergency center for storms and disasters. I was trained to do that as well. Upon my retirement, like most people when they retire, they're looking to play golf. They're looking to sit back and have fun. So I started looking around and started looking at the direction of the agency and realized this agency was not moving in the direction it should have been going in. So I decided, with my training, with my work experience, and my education. Now, I hold a master's of public administration with an emphasis on human resource management. So I decided it's time to do something. We need a change. In 2014, President Obama put together a task force. It was from people from all over the country, all walks of life. And they were looking for strategies to bring law enforcement into the 21st century. So they produced a package, they produced an instrument called Best Practices for the 21st Century Policing. I dove into it, I read it, and I read it several times, and I realized this is the best product that we have now to get to the 21st century. And what I mean by that is, baby boomers have a totally different mindset than today's generation. Baby boomers was taught to say yes sir, no sir, and just follow orders. And what I realized with this new generation, because we have taught them to ask questions if they were unsure about what was being said or the directions. And when I realized—
May I ask you if you don't mind, because as an educator, all of my interviews will be viewed by my students, which are a very, very important segment of our population. And we're going to talk about the youth involvement as well. Just define baby boomers, and I may ask you to define the terminology. Yeah, because sometimes we get used with we're so comfortable with the language, and we're not speaking to a monolithic audience. So I want you to be able to have a message that all people, all age groups can understand.
Okay, baby boomers are typically people that were born from 1945. They were born in 1945 and moved forward to about 1965.
Okay.
And after 1965, I don't know if we had a title for that generation after 1965. I know we started calling Generation X, Generation Y, Generation G, Generation Z. I don't have those age brackets in front of me.
Me neither. I'm supposed to understand what those age groups mean, but I don't understand all of those age groups either. But continue, please.
But I do know their mindset is different than our mindsets.
Right.
Because and I'm not saying that in a negative way, because this is the way we taught them. This is the way we want them to perform as they grow older. But the problem with that is that we forgot to teach law enforcement what we were teaching them. So what we're having is that when we have a young person stop by the police and they say, "Why are you stopping me?" And the police officer says, "You don't have the right to question me. Do as you're told," because that training that they've received has not evolved to the 21st century. So their training says, "I'm always in control. No one challenges my authority." And we tell our youth, if you don't understand, ask the questions. So that's why we're having the conflict when law enforcement and the youth are coming together, because both of them are operating from their platforms in which they were taught. And it's not for the children, it's not for the community to change their thought process. It is the police, law enforcement, to change theirs. So with that being said, bringing the best practices of the 21st century forward, bringing it forward, the first pillar that they talked about was trust building and legitimacy. It clearly states that law enforcement cannot police or provide the service to the community that they're attempting to provide it unless they legitimize the service.
Mhm.
Meaning police in the past became the oppressors, not the protectors. But the 21st century model says you're no longer the oppressors, you're the protectors. You go back to the original definition of law enforcement. You're not here to control, you're here to assist. But until we change that training, pillar number 2, until we change that training, we're not going to change those interactions. But before you can change the training, we need to go back and look at who are we hiring? Who are we actually bringing into this?
And I look calm. I really do look calm. However, as I said, you're running for the most important seat in Broward County, and you're talking about some points, and I have to keep it to an hour, otherwise I'll be on here forever. There are just so many important points that you're making that I need to flesh out, because who are we hiring is major, right? Because now in America, and possibly all over the world, we have an awakening of what does it mean to police a community, possibly police brutality on certain segments of our community. And even though you may hire the best candidate who graduated top of the class, who's physically fit, I'm not necessarily sure we can fully understand the complicated psychology of an individual to predict how they're going to respond in a split second in the community, right? I'm not necessarily sure you can say to yourself as the sheriff, this person's not going to shoot a member of the community unnecessarily. So who you're going to hire is major. And honestly, I respect all 10 of you, all of the candidates who want to sit in that hot seat. I respect anyone who would want to do that, because depending on how someone behaves, a member of your staff behaves in the community, that's going to be your responsibility.
Yes, it is. So with that being said, who are we hiring? We need to change the hiring practices, because the hiring practices are still based upon 20th century modalities and philosophies. We need to change that and bring it to the 21st century. That goes along with training. Training is still based upon the 20th century. We need to bring it to the 21st century. Think about this. We have approximately 250 some odd high schools in Broward County.
253, well, 250 schools, 253 to my recollection.
Okay, let's just talk about high school, ninth grade to 12th grade.
Correct.
We put in a program, dual enrollment, because when you go to the police academy, you pick up 11 credit hours. We do dual enrollment starting with the 9th grade. That gives me 4 years to talk, interact, train young people that are in high school, because everybody's not going to go to college.
Right.
And if just because the kids take the course don't mean they're going to become cops.
Right.
But it expands our base as far as applicants. But it also gives us the opportunity to groom
some minds, to groom some young minds. Absolutely.
I don't say groom, I say train in the 21st century modalities.
What's the difference?
Well, grooming, when you groom someone, you're just fixing them up.
Okay. Got
Training,
it.
you're preparing them.
Gotcha.
So once they complete high school and they turn 18, they can sit for the state test. And why is that important? Because once you become a state certified police officer, it bumps you up in the hiring process. Because now when I send you to the police academy, instead of sending you there for 8 months, 6 months, I just cut out 2 months of training, 3 months of training. So thus on the economic side, instead of waiting for someone to spend 6 months in the academy, then 1 year on probation, I now get them indoctrinated quicker. But the most significant thing about this is we're taking people from the community.
Oh, absolutely.
We're taking
Absolutely.
young people that grew up and they know the young people that they're going to be policing. Because remember, the fastest growing population, part of our population, are the degenerates, all those alphabets. They are there. The baby boomers are dying.
Right.
They're dying. So we need to be able to train them, get them ready to take over and actually run law enforcement.
The next generation. All right. So a couple questions for you, and they don't mean to be putting on the spot, but it's just the sign of the times. In the context of policing, do Black Lives Matter?
Yes. Yes, it does. And the reason it does is because Black people are being assaulted, brutalized more often than any other population or any other ethnic group in our population. We must look at what is creating the problem. I like, without minimizing it, and people say to me, especially people are not from my community, they say all lives matter. And I say, no, I say, you're correct, but Black lives matter because, and I use this analogy, if you're going on a road trip and you inspect all 4 tires and one tire has a nail in it, which tire matters? You need all 4 tires to travel, but what tire really matters?
Very good point. Very good point.
The one with the nail. So Black lives matter.
All tires matter, but the tire that's punctured is the one that needs attention right now.
Exactly. And we're losing Black lives every day to law enforcement training or lack thereof. They don't understand. And that's why Black lives matter.
Right. Well, as an educator, I say it differently. I say Black Lives Matter, and then somebody else says all lives matter. And I said, well, then guess what? That's wonderful because we're saying the same thing in different words, right? because all lives matter means Black Lives Matter. All lives matter means white lives matter. All lives matter means all Hispanic lives matter. So if I say Black Lives Matter and somebody says all lives matter, I said, well, then we're on the same page, right? Because exactly. under the umbrella of all lives matter, Black lives matter, right?
Yeah, but you know, people become politically comfortable with saying all lives matter. Then they minimize the issues that are actually facing
that are
us
unique
right
to our
now.
community. That are unique to our community, right?
So I'm not going to allow them or myself to use that phrase until we make sure Black lives matter and we address the issues that we're facing now.
Right. So what does that mean as a sheriff, though? Because as the sheriff, the potential sheriff for Broward County, you're going to be the voice of safety, the face of safety for all residents of Broward County, which is incredibly diverse. What does Black Lives Matter mean for an African-American sheriff?
It simply means, for me, I must change this culture that resides in law enforcement. The culture that we're trained with and have been trained with is a warrior mentality. A warrior mentality says we're going to battle. And who are we fighting with? We're fighting with the people we're supposed to protect. Mm-hmm. I need to take that away. People talk about de-escalation right now. The only thing when you say de-escalation, you're talking respect. That's all you're talking about is respect. Respect people for where they are when you reach the same space. So when I say we're going to break that culture, and I'm going to jump ahead of you because people say, well, you got the union to deal with. The union job is to protect, under labor laws, protect the employees of the Broward Sheriff's Office, those very same deputies, firefighters, support staff workers, CPS workers, is protect them from my policies and practices based upon labor disputes, not criminality. They have taken on the role is that we're going to protect the police officer, the law enforcement officer at all costs. Whereas when you read the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida, it clearly states we the people, not we the police.
Very good point.
So we need to break that mindset, that culture And how you do that is by forming partnerships. And I'm aware that everybody, we have what, over 600,000 registered Democrats. I would love to get all 600,000, but realistically, I know I'm not. I know I'm not. So with that being said, I know I'm not going to please everybody. So my position is not being politically correct, not taking the politically expedient solution. As the sheriff, and this is in my personal life, is to be right, regardless of who doesn't like it, who does not want to stand with me, as long as I'm making the right decision for the right reason and for the people. Because the bottom line is, my job is to protect the people of Broward County. Yes, the deputies and the people that work for the sheriff's office live and work in Broward County. So guess what? I got to protect them too. But I don't protect them the same way as I protect the citizens. I protect them by inputting proper policies, practices, and training so they can be very good at what they do, delivering the service to the people of Broward County.
I'm very happy that you brought up the word protect, because that brings us to my next question. You, 10 candidates, and again, for those who are watching this and for those who will watch this, there are 10 candidates who have qualified for Broward County Sheriff, and one has already been granted to a candidate. This is the second one out of 10, and the other 8, you are welcome to reach out to get an exclusive 1-hour interview so that the community, the voters of Broward County, can get to know you better. However, you guys are running in a very unique time, and we probably say this every election season. However, it's just kind of crazy in terms of what's going on right now. You mentioned the word protect. We have something I have not seen in my lifetime. It has happened before in humanity and probably will happen again. We have this phenomenon of the pandemic of COVID-19. What does it mean to you to be the top person responsible for safety in a time like this? What does COVID-19 mean for the sheriff?
What it means to me, people say the pandemic was unpredicted. People say that there was nothing we could have done about the pandemic. If we remember when the first report started coming out, there were leaders calling it a hoax. Well, as a leader, as the sheriff, when I look at and hear that data, it's my responsibility to have a team in place to say, research it. Once they do their research, do we have enough resources to protect our employees so they can protect the community? Have we put something in place to do that? You know, we're in the middle of hurricane season. And
that's another phenomenon.
Yeah. We prepare for hurricanes every year. We stock up on water, batteries, the whole 9 yards. And when we get the report, there's a storm sitting off the coast, because we have days and days and days information to prepare for it. We don't call it a hoax. We don't say, I pray that it goes by us. We prepare for it. So when they give us those warnings, we go out and we board up, we shelter up, we put everything in place. We take care of the crisis. We prepare for the crisis before we get hit with the storm, because you cannot put up storm shutters in 90-mile-an-hour wind. Thus, with that being said, once we knew it was happening, now we have to prepare for it. We cannot close our eyes and say, as some people have done, they close eyes, and put out that false stuff, and we got this, we got that, we got this, and you never had it. Now you prepare for it by putting those things in place, because those PPE kits, those masks, those gloves, the anti-bacterial stuff, hand wash, that doesn't go bad. It has almost an infinite shelf life. So if we purchased it and we boxed it up and we kept it there, it's not a loss. But as we found out, it was not a hoax, but we already purchased it, so now we can protect people. A leader must have the vision. They must have the vision in the future. They must plan for things that's unseen. They must plan for things that could happen. You got to put something in place for that. You can't wait till it happen. That's something you can't do. And I want to go back to the climate where Black Lives Matter, the civil protests, and I'm not going to call it unrest, the civil protests. Mm-hmm. We knew it was coming. We saw it. Mr. George Floyd was not the first individual.
Not the first, and unfortunately not the last. You're 100% correct about that. We've seen Rodney King, we've seen Amadou Diallo, we've seen the other sisters and so forth.
Breonna,
Breonna Taylor.
And the thing is, just like a hurricane, the warnings were given. The law enforcement community closed their eyes. They shut their ears. Because remember, we're dealing from the 20th century. And unfortunately, law enforcement is the only one that has not moved into the 21st century because they're a single source service providing agency.
What does that mean? Flesh that out. Explain that to my high school students who will see this, because I will assign this interview to them and I will ask them to write a paper on what they're understanding from this conversation. Explain that.
Okay, single source service provider simply means if I stop one of your students on the streets and give him a hard time, make him lay down on that hot asphalt and talk about his lineage the whole 9 yards, and then decide I'm not going to arrest him. He goes home and someone has broken into his family home and taken his Game Boy, taken his Nikes. He calls who? The police. I may be that very officer that just put you down on the ground, that just disrespected you, but now I got to give you the service because someone broke into your house. Right. You can't call anybody else to receive this service. I'm the only one. So, and what that simply means, as I stated before, if I don't know how to interact or change how I interact with the public, I can treat you any kind of way I want. Right. And that's the crux. That's the meat. That's what we need to change. And that's the purpose of the 21st century strategy. Because the 21st century strategy says you bring all stakeholders to the table, not just the elected officials, not just the people that own corporations, not just the CEOs of social organizations, not just the preachers. You bring all stakeholders to the table. Everybody that has a stake in the game needs to be at that table, not individually, not separately, but all together. So as the incoming sheriff, now we're moving into oversight. I'm planning to put a public citizen review board, a citizen oversight board, not just to determine if an officer or deputy did something wrong, but also allow us to predict future crises, not just the pandemics, not just a police shooting, but what services do we need in our community to make them whole, to make them feel as a part and not police separately. In 2016, we interviewed with the Sun Sentinel, and the question was asked, do you think the Black community is policed differently in other communities? Out of the 5 candidates that was running then, in the previous administration leader, Scott Israel was there, they said no. I was the only one that said yes. Wow. I was the only one that sat there and said yes. And that's a public paper. That's printed. That's in print. So being that leader.
It's on the record. It's on the record that you said that. It's on the record.
Yeah. I saw it coming. I know there's a difference. But back to what I was saying is that we need to get everybody together before a crisis. We cannot solve an issue in the middle of a crisis, because what's happening now is that you see the police, they went back to what's comfortable to them. Put you right put your riot shields on, put your helmet on, get the gas mask. This is how they were trained, how we were trained to deal with this type of climate.
Right.
But if we're trained differently, if I have the leaders from the community, they have a buy-in, they know we're doing what we're supposed to do to protect the community, we can have the marches, we can have the protesters, and I don't have to put everybody in the militarized uniforms and become us against them.
Right.
We need to change that mentality. Police is not here to oppress the community, we're here to protect the community. And that's where we're moving. I don't know if you're familiar with that paperwork, the task force paperwork. It's 97 pages, and I was you can go into the 21st Century Task Force, download it, read it. It's very interesting, because my belief is that if any law enforcement agency would have started the implementations of that, we possibly could have curbed a lot of things that's actually happening in our community.
Where did such a report come from?
That came from President Obama's task force. That's where it came from. And I remember him putting the task force together. I remember hearing bits and pieces about it. Like most folks, it went right by me. But until I decided I was going to run, I pulled that document down. And Rude Awakening, there's another organization, young people's organization, Campaign Zero. Yeah, and this is Campaign Zero. It's an additive to the President Obama's task force. But it's
these are recommendations on how to police communities.
Yes. Campaign Zero. They took it from and added to the 21st century. I'm reading this here. Number one, in the broken window policing model, community oversight, limited use of force, independent investigative prosecution, community representation, body cams film for the police, training, in for-profit policing, take away the army part.
Demilitarization.
Yes, I like that word. And fair police union contracts. These are the things that we're going to need to look at, take a hard look at, and implement some of these strategies, because these are the strategies that's going to work for the 21st century. And this is what the young people are saying, inclusive of what President Obama did. And as they say, these policies are aimed to protect and preserve life.
Speaking of protecting and preserving life, and this may be a silly question, however, I will ask it because it has come across in the community, and my students have also possibly mentioned it. Do you believe that it's possible to police without guns?
In America, no.
Okay.
In America, no. I did 40 years on in police work. I never shot no one. Thank you, Lord. But I can tell you this. I'll tell you this. I've seen some weapons out there that will frighten you. And if we take weapons from law enforcement, we will get back to the Wild Wild West. Because we must understand, everybody is not law abiding. Everybody is not respectful.
Unfortunately.
So yes, we need police here, but we need the police to do what's right. We don't need the police to be a part of the problem. Police has to be problem solvers.
Right. And when you talk about police doing what's right, talk a little bit about police accountability, because one of the objectives I would like to see be met is where there would be some sort of an independent review board, community review board, to be able to evaluate cases to figure out whether or not certain acts were justified or justifiable. Because oftentimes when a police officer unfortunately kills a member of our community, the first response is, well, I was afraid for my life, so I had to use deadly force. And so I would like to see more police accountability, and I would like to be able to see more community involvement in policing. So talk to us about holding police more accountable and also increase community engagement.
Okay, let's take the back end of the question. Let's take the back end of the question and work backwards to it. Police accountability, police oversight boards. The oversight board is what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for lawyers, law enforcement. I'm not looking for the professional people, because their education, granted, they earned it, is good, but their educational viewpoints are different from people that live in the community. I need to go to people such as yourself, teachers, electricians, mechanics, the everyday common mom, the mom that stays at home. I need for them to become part of my review board. And my opponents will say, well, they don't have any understanding of law. They don't understand what police do. Then what we do, we train them. We put them in the police academy. We teach them the policies and procedures. We teach them what police officers go through. I don't want them to be police officers. I just need them to have an understanding. So when they're sitting at the table making those decisions, they have a basis for making that decision, but they're not making it from a professional standpoint. They're making it from an understanding standpoint. Thus, when you do that, you get the honesty in the decision making. Because what people do, you're an educator, and you demonstrated earlier when I started talking about things. You say, I need you to break this down for my youth. And that's what professionals do. They go back to their training. They go back there. So if I have a lawyer, the lawyer is going to sit there and say, oh, the Constitution says.
Right. And I appreciate the sophisticated language. However, dealing with ninth graders, and with all due respect to the professional community, it's more important to me that the young people understand what you're saying than the professional people.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if I get someone who's had an experience, be it good, bad, or indifference, with a law enforcement person who's now sitting there, they have that life experience from the other side. Now they also have a basis of why he or she may have done that. Now we get the real results. But on top of that, I just don't want this group to come and meet once a month and give recommendations that sits on someone's desk with no follow-up, no follow-through. I want to make sure this board has the ability to influence the outcome. They gotta
So what would you do? What would you do? The ability to hire and fire? What would you do? Because it's going to be a voluntary independent review board. That's interesting that you're saying that, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people would be interested in that.
Yeah, yes, the answer is yes. But now we take their recommendation. It comes back to my internal affairs and their recommendation. It sits on my desk. We sit with the union. Because remember, I said, we're going to change the culture. In changing the culture, we're going to rewrite the policies. Day one, we're going to rewrite the policies, because we have policies in place. I have a policy say that don't turn right. Then I have a policy you can turn right at 2 o'clock. Then I have a policy say, you can't turn right at 2 o'clock.
Right.
I need to get rid of the
inconsistencies.
Exactly. So we're going to come back to one simple thing. These are the policies that's here. So once we do all of that, the review board now has an intricate part in the decision-making process. When we're dealing with possibly deputy wrongdoings. And the other professional is going to say, but you're putting a deputy's livelihood in the hands of ordinary people. My response is, you're putting ordinary people's lives in the hands of a deputy.
That's right.
His decision to arrest, to pull that firearm, has deadly consequences.
That's right. That's
So
right.
we need to make sure there's a balance, or you call it accountability. There must be balance there, so
The check and balance. Right.
so the deputy knows who they're protecting, and we're going to properly train them. One of the studies that I've read, that 5% of the population actually commit crime.
Mm-hmm.
Most law enforcement agencies take 95% of their resources to go after that 5%.
Wow.
Thus, 95% of the people that's living by the rules, living by the laws, doing what they can to take care of their families are being neglected. So as the incoming sheriff, how you do that? Well, I realize people are going to get arrested. People are going to get tickets. We're going to write traffic tickets. We're going to do traffic crashes. We're going to answer the 911 calls. The fire department's going to come put out your house, you get you out of the car. We know those are staples of public safety. That stuff has to be there. But what doesn't have to be there, I don't need 16, and I'm gonna use some simplified numbers. I don't need 50 captains, 100 lieutenants, 20 majors, and I don't need the higher echelon to run this agency. Because when I hire people from the rank of captain and above, it soaks up a lot of our
resources. Mm-hmm.
So what do? We trim down, we're not as top heavy as we say in the business. We don't have all of that authority at the top. By doing that, that frees up money to put back to the people that are delivering the service at the counter. Mm-hmm. Deputies now will have the ability to go to school and get additional training. Mm-hmm. Be it criminal law, civil law, de-escalation, how to defend yourself without going to your weapon. They would then be given that opportunity to learn how to do it. And we will make it mandatory that they do training, not once a year, year round. We're on a 12-hour shift rotation on the road. Mm-hmm. That simply means some days you work 3 days a week, 3 days, and the next week you work 4 days. Mm-hmm. We're going to make it mandatory that when you're working, out of those days that you're working, that you will be going to training. You will go to train in workout, running, at physical training. That you're also going to spend half an hour, 45 minutes in a classroom. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be on duty. And people say, what do you mean? I said, we're paying for it anyway.
Right.
When deputies eat, they're on duty. They're getting paid to eat. So why don't we make it so they get a benefit, they get to work out? Because if you're physically fit, you don't have to go to your weapons because you're assuring yourself. Right. If you're physically fit, you have a clear mindset.
Right. Pardon me for interrupting, one of the areas of interest of mine, one of the many areas of interest is what you mentioned is the de-escalation. And one of the key components of de-escalation in order to prevent the unnecessary killings of citizens and residents of Broward County is communication. And I always ask this over and over again. I am a non-English speaking immigrant from the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. I had to learn English, mm-hmm. and I thank my parents for that in the school systems out of New York City. And I'd like to really know, because out of the 10 of you, one of you will be elected, right? Mm-hmm. And I just going to put it on the record because social media is a moving record, is a living record. And I'd be very interested in learning about the commitment you are all making to diversity, and particularly linguistic diversity. Because if, for example, there's a situation out in the community and the cop cannot communicate to that person speaks Spanish, that person speaks Creole, or Portuguese, I would like to know how much investment is going to be made in hiring cops. And pardon me, I don't know if you can hear the lawnmower out there. No, in hiring cops who speak different languages, because that in itself can help de-escalate a whole lot of potential problems just by being able to communicate.
Yeah, a couple of things. When I worked for Metro Dade in corrections, I was part of the data processing team, which simply meant that I did booking and releasing. You know, I booked when people came to jail, I did their paperwork, I asked those pertinent questions, and I did it for misdemeanors and felonies and at the desk. One of the things that you had to learn when you were on that thing was conversational Spanish. That was a mandate. If you were going to work on that team, you needed to have that conversational Spanish. Now, when I came to Broward County, it was not required. And if you don't use that skill set, you lose it. There's times I can listen to a Hispanic people speaking in Spanish, and I can pick up a couple of words, you know, what's going on. Cultural diversity cannot be cultural sensitivity. Cultural diversity, you have to understand the culture, the people that you're serving. You need to know why they go to church on Fridays versus Sunday, why they're Catholics versus Baptists, why do they celebrate this date and that date. That's cultural diversity. Because one of the things I learned going into a household where the Muslim Islamic is stated, I learned that the only person that can stand in a room with a female that's married to a man in that practice is him. What are we taught in domestic violence? To separate. Put the man in this room, the woman in this room. Where if you don't understand the culture, you just insulted this man and his house. And now you're trying to figure out why he's cussing and want to fight. Right. Because you don't understand his culture. But police training says I must separate them to get the story. So what we must do, instead of talking culture sensitivity, we got to talk culture diversity. So when the deputy walks up, he knows that. Now, going back to your question about giving deputies the training to understand and learn how to communicate, working in Pompano, we had an apartment complex. We had a high number of calls and recalls. So my captain says to me, go find out what's the problem. So I go out there and I'm talking to people, or tried to talk to people, tried to talk to people. Then I realized 80% of the people here are Haitian. They speak Creole.
Right.
So what the deputies were doing, because they didn't understand, they'll go out there and come back and say the problem solved. Then we get a recall. How we settle that, and this comes from my community relationship building. I talk to the manager of the property and says, explain to him the issue we're having. How can you help me? He says, I can hire, or I can put a person in here, reduce rent, that speaks English and Creole. And when the deputies get there, I don't care what time of day or night there, if there's an issue, they can call on this person. Within 60 days, we reduce hypothetically 75% calls and recalls down to 5, because we broke the communication barrier. We had someone telling us what was going on. And this is the type of understanding that a leader must have. And because of my background, because of my training, because of my education, I've seen it, I've done it. I'm not just an instructor, I'm a practitioner. I've been able to go out there and practice these techniques. And this is the direction I'm going. Back to breaking the culture. Any human resource manager will tell you, when you hire people, you know who you're hiring. You change your instruments in hiring, how you're bringing them in. But the most important part is the training. It's training them how and what to do. That breaks culture. But you can't break culture if the leader is not trusted. If the leader...
Well, that's on my list of questions. And pardon me for interrupting, because that whole cloud around trust and relationship building with the police, honestly, again, I do not envy your goals. I do not envy your job. I do not really understand how can anybody wrap their brain around that, because the element of trust between community and cops is major. How are you attempting to overcome that?
I'm already doing that. If you notice, the yes, we did the endorsement protocols in interviews because that's part of the process.
Mhm.
We did not get major endorsements. We don't have the endorsement from the union. We don't have major political parties endorsing us.
Mhm.
We don't have special interest money donating to our campaign. So what does that say? That says when I become the sheriff, I don't have to listen to you.
Mhm.
I don't owe you anything.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, as the sheriff, I can tell you right up front, this is how it's going to go. We're going to make it right. And see, and when deals, you understand politics, you know, and when deals are cut, when people give you money, think about this here. One of the candidates got $500,000 in a PAC from an individual you have no relationship with.
Mm.
Who in the world would give you $500,000 and don't expect something back?
Mm. Mm. One of the candidates in this race.
In this race.
Wow, for sheriff, received $500,000 for a PAC.
And many of the other candidates in this race have received special interest money. They're gonna say it's not special interest money, but if you take a look at their donors list,
if you follow the money,
you follow the money, you'll see special interest money. And I don't dismiss the union endorsement. I say this, the union that endorsed one of the candidates currently also endorsed Scott Israel. The union president was in a meeting with the governor, Andrew Pollock, at the governor's ball and cut a deal. All this is documented. We have all this documented. I'm not spreading gospel. You can research it. It's there. Go to our website, you'll see it. We have all the newsprints. So now you have three people that had or have a relationship with the union. We know the union gave a vote of no confidence on two of them. Why? Because they stepped away from the union. They stepped away from that relationship. So what we're saying is we're not developing those relationships that appear to be unhealthy for the people of Broward County. Be it money, people, or groups. This is not what we're not doing. The only endorsement that I am truly looking for is August 18th, when all the numbers are counted, are from the people of Broward County. And I take that position like President Obama. When he won by that landslide, by all those folks, and he stood in front of Congress, he clearly stated, I am going to do the will of the people that voted me in. I don't have to listen to this congressman, this senator. These are the people, and that's the position we're taking. And how do you hold me accountable? I don't live in a gated community. I don't go to a specialized church. I'm of the community. I've been of the community for the past 40 years. The cell number that you call me on, I've had since 95. And I don't know how many folks had that number. The only thing I ask people to do, if I don't know you, send me a text first, but I will respond to you. Because I belong to the people. And when I'm elected, my statement is, I belong to the people.
Right.
And just like I asked you early on, don't call me mister. Remember when you're coming up and you knew when you were in trouble, when your mom called you by your first, middle, and last name?
Yes. Ted Victor. Yes.
So I'm saying this to say that if you have something to say to Willie Jones, who's now the sheriff of Broward County, please don't call me Sheriff Jones, because I'm gonna put on that hat as Sheriff Jones. But if you call me Willie Jones, I know it's serious and we need to talk. You know, all the pretense has gone away. I know we have a major issue and we need to talk. And I've been told that there's nowhere in the world I can answer calls personally. I can go out there and talk to people. And I stated to him, you're wrong. My job as a sheriff, as the overseer, as the provider of resources to the personnel that work within the sheriff's office, that's my job. I just got to make sure they have the tools and the resources to do the job. My job is not to do the day-to-day work.
Right.
I control my schedule to meet with whomever I need to meet with from the public. And it's not all going to be politicians. It's not all going to be CEOs. The best information that I ever received is from the people of the community. I remember working in Fort Lauderdale. I had this young kid standing out selling dope. And I know he's selling dope because I arrested him before. So I told him, you can't stand here. So he gave me a hard time. Came back, made the arrest. Later on that afternoon, I go back and I like to walk. I got out of my car before it was fashionable or politically correct. I got out of my car. So I'm walking. I'm talking the 80s. I'm walking. And this lady, these two elderly ladies were sitting on a porch under this nice shade tree that had a good breeze. They called me over. And I walked over, we started talking. They say, would you like some tea? No, ma'am, I'm okay. No, we want you to have some tea. We want to talk to you. They gave me a glass of iced tea. They're sitting in chairs. I'm sitting on the scoop and we're talking. And the first thing they said to us, thank you very much for moving that young man. This is the first time I've been able to enjoy this shade tree with this breeze.
Amazing. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I thank you so very much. And there's just so many other things we didn't have a chance to cover very quickly. We have about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to ask you for your closing statement as to why the voters of Broward County should vote for you for sheriff of this county. Very quickly, can you talk about two things super quickly? Talk about the budget. How big is the budget for BSO?
I think in October, we're going to be maybe $12 million shy of $1 billion.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, and the breakdown of that budget, we'll have to probably talk about it at another time. And then in your view, in your assessment, should cops live in the community that they police?
Yes. And that goes back to think about this. What if I start training folks from the 9th grade on? Mm-hmm. They live in the community, they are of the community, so I don't anticipate them moving away from the community. When we go to southwest part of the United States, to northeast part of the United States to hire police officers, they come here, they have never been a part of our community, so they don't have a buy-in. They don't have a connection.
A relationship. They're less likely to shoot people that they know. So, it's important. Relationship, it's all about relationship building. You build a relationship with the community, you're less likely to shoot them. And as a result, you increase morale between cops and community. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But also, because they're not from the community, they don't have that relationship you just spoke of. They're more quick to go to other counties, affluent parts of the county, and not within the community. People that we're looking to hire, they're already part of the community. Right. They're less likely to move away from the community because that's where their ties are.
Right. Willie Jones.
Are.
Pardon me, we have about 2 minutes left. I'm going to allow you to give your closing statements as to why this is your chance to tell the residents of Broward County as to why they should vote for you. You're going to be on full screen, and let us know why we should vote for you.
Well, you've heard the candidates, or you will hear the candidates. You heard me. Now it is time for the voters, you, to make a decision. It's time to make a decision. And the decision you're going to make is going to be very important. Because this decision is going to determine the future of our community, the future of our children, the future of the progress of unifying the Broward County and the Sheriff's Office that serves the Broward County community, and that's with the same justice. Because I've been a public servant for 40 years, that's roughly 60% of my life. And I've been a concerned citizen involved in many different community projects and organizations. And I'm consistent. I'm not just here because I want to be elected. I've been a part of this community because I'm morally and ethically grounded. I'm willing to admit to my mistakes, constantly looking to solve problems. with corporations from other people of our communities. I'm willing to make the hardcore decisions like moving boldly into the 21st century policing best practices. Even if this decision is unpopular with the rank and file, with the unions, and with some of the people of our community. I can stand up because I belong to nobody but God and myself. We're gonna not make decisions which is politically correct. We're gonna make them because they're morally and they're right. We're not gonna do that. As you can clearly see, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity, I'm the candidate that can move this sheriff's office forward without special interest, without special money, without special people. I can make BSO better for all of us. I need your vote, not just on August 18th. The early ballots are gonna drop in about 5 to 6 days. When you sit down to your table, when you go to the early voting, and when you vote on August 18th, we need not to take a risk, not to gamble anymore. We know what we've seen in the past from the previous and current administration. They have failed us. We can no longer take their words, their money, that they're gonna protect us because they've shown us they won't. Under the previous administration, there were 3 black males killed by Broward Sheriff's deputies, unarmed. We saw what happened under this current administration with DeLuca. We need a sheriff, a leader that would not waver in the political winds. We need someone that is ethically, morally grounded and believe in the community. And that candidate you're listening to right now, Willie Jones. To learn more about me, Willie Jones 2020. Thank you. Thank you, Ted, for bringing me on. Thank you for allowing me this time to talk. And you know, we could talk for 2 hours and never cover all the issues.
Right. Well, I thank you very much, Willie Jones, for your time. There you have it, social media land. My name is Ted Victor, and I am the founder of the Broward Social Network. Today is Tuesday, June the 30th, the last day in June in 2020, which was with an interview with Willie Jones, who is a candidate for Broward County Sheriff. Just once again, to make it clear for everyone who is going to view this interview, this opportunity is open to all candidates equally, a 1-hour exclusive interview, because the 2-minute time frames are not necessarily enough for the individuals who are vying for the most important seat in Broward County. As far as I'm concerned, the sheriff is probably the most important seat in this county, and we all must pay attention to all of the current events. So please share this interview with others, and you can contact me on social media so that you can set up an interview if you are a candidate. There are 10 candidates. 2 so far have been interviewed for the seat. There are 8 left, and all are equally welcomed in order to be able to share their message with the constituents of Broward County. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you all again, the participants and the residents of Broward County, and Mr. Willie Jones. Willie Jones, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
You have a wonderful day.
You too.